Good morning to the leadership of SIGFARO, all other leadership from various organizations, colleagues. Thank you very much for affording me this opportunity to share with you some of our experiences at eThekwini Municipality. I believe there's not too many of us here from eThekwini for various reasons. We're under a lot of pressure at the moment, so the colleagues are busy dealing with critical matters in the environment. So just to let you know, I'm not a member of SIGFARO. However, I come from a financial background. I was the head of audit for over 20 years in various organizations, dealing with audit and risk. And I happened to be at the right place at the right time. When I did my master's, I did it on performance management, and I ended up being the head of monitoring and evaluation, not because of the thesis, but because I was at the right place at the right time. So 21 years ago, I started the monitoring and evaluation unit at eThekwini Municipality. At that time, the Systems Act had just come into being. Nobody knew where to place this new animal called performance management. They knew they needed to manage the performance of officials. Subsequently, the president in 2009 then created the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. Actually, it was originally Performance Monitoring and Evaluation. It then became Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. So we changed the name of eThekwini's department or unit from Performance Management to Performance Monitoring and Evaluation. So the key around this topic is around how do we monitor performance on the ground. But it's more about how do we accelerate performance. So I'm going to very quickly, so the topic that was given to me was how do we deal with sound, if you read there, sound integrated planning beyond the IDP. So a colleague of mine asked me, why are you dealing with the IDP stuff? And I said, no, this is beyond the IDP, which is where we come in. So thank you very much for inviting me. I'm not going to go through the introduction. So the IDP at a municipal level, I think this is the wrong presentation. I did send through another presentation. If I could just ask that presentation to be put up, please. I sent through an updated presentation. I'll take you through the introduction, though, in the meantime, hoping that, I'm not sure where the presentations are being done, but in any event, I'll just do the intro.
Let's do this. We are able to continue with this version. Must wait for the next one.
I'll start with the introduction whilst we wait for the correct version to be put up.
Thanks, Lindy. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the Integrated Development Plan is a legislated process, as many of you know. So many of you either from risk, audit, or finance. I just want to find out, is there anyone from the performance field here? Yes. Performance, there are. Oh, I heard a big yes. Thank you very much. So I wanted to start with this, even though the previous speaker spoke about what's happening in the global world with Trump literally leading the world into a state of depression. We have a bit of that here in reality. I've taken these pictures not from eThekwini Municipality, but from across the country itself. So I think some of them were shown when we did the risk presentation earlier this morning. But the challenge we have is this is the reality on the ground. Some years ago, when we were reflecting on performance information, we were reflecting a very lovely picture. Targets were there, we achieved our targets, and then the audit committee started harassing us. But what is happening on the ground? Are you looking at what's happening on the ground? We literally had to change our processes to make sure that we verify whether the information being presented by the units on the SDBIP, the Service Delivery Budget Implementation Plan, was actually valid and true. Because what they were reflecting was just figures that they wanted to reflect performance. Meanwhile, if you go onto the ground, you'll see that services were not being effectively rendered. So much of it is around silo planning, interest and corruption. I do believe you must have covered this quite severely. The lack of direction, and also disintegrated planning. And I think that for us is the main focus in this discussion today. This morning, and that's the reason why I updated the slide, was to just show you some of this, and I believe you may have covered this already. The fact that the Auditor General of South Africa, this was the latest report that I had, reflects the number of municipalities across the country with qualification in their findings. So from a governance perspective, we are failing. From a service delivery on the ground, there's failings. There are obviously some areas where there's excellence in performance, but because of the challenge around not providing those people on the ground with services that they need, we find ourselves really looking at ourselves introspectively and saying, are we doing what is required to be done? So many of you know about the IDP. So the IDP is a legislative document. It's supposed to be the foundation for local governance. It's supposed to be a plan for sustainable development, and it's supposed to allow you to allocate resources. But despite this IDP framework, which is legislated and which is required to be compiled by all municipalities, in fact, some municipalities go to the extent of having consultants come and do their IDP, which really says, do the consultants know more than you in terms of what's happening within your municipal environment? We find that there's challenges in translating plans into measurable and impactful performance, which is why I showed those slides earlier. So what we were looking for is sound integrated planning, which is what I wanted to speak on. So we've got the strategy of the organization. We all know the strategy is a roadmap towards taking an organization to where it wants to get to. The IDP then translates the strategy into a plan. And I mentioned how it should have been making this a roadmap towards making these decisions that are taken at council level, at administrative level, to be seen on the ground. However, we all are scratching our heads, looking far into the distance. Has it been making a difference? Clearly it has not, because there's been a lack of adaptive planning, and there's also been silo planning. So when I talk about silo planning within a municipality, I find that certain departments plan for themselves without looking at the consequences of their plan, and there may be even unintended consequences. For example, I live in a road in Durban, obviously. I live here and I work in the environment. And if I drive down a road, I'll see that there's a group of workers digging up the ground, maybe on the pavement, to lay some piping. They lay the piping, and then they cover the hole. The next day, fiber comes through. They dig up the hole. They lay their fiber, close the hole. A couple of days later, we have a problem with a water burst. They dig up the hole. So if you go around, not only the potholes that we've seen, there's a whole range of holes being dug up and not being completely filled. Now, when we talk about silo planning, so for example, the engineering department is planning on their own, the water and sanitation department is planning on their own, the external departments, the fiber subcontractors are planning on their own. So there's a total lack of integrated planning. And we find that the entire municipality is now covered up with all these holes being dug all over the place. Instead of looking at it and saying, okay, fine, we know there's a plan. I'm sure everybody has plans. This is our plan, except for obviously where we have burst water pipes and all of that. But if there's a plan, why can't we integrate those plans so that we all work together in different wards? So if we're dealing with Ward 1, for example, whatever plan of action in Ward 1, can't we all work together so that we all achieve the same thing? And this is unfortunately the problem with society and with the municipalities as a whole. We tend to plan in a silo level. So the challenges we have now, we create these services, but at the same time, because we're planning, we go and deliver the service. If you look at this particular picture here, I don't know which way to look, but anyway, you can see the picture at the bottom. We've delivered a service. We've provided a toilet facility, ablution facility for the people. Is that what the communities want? We are busy planting trees so that we deal with the climate change issue. And on a very rainy day, we decide to go and water those trees just to take a picture to show the world we're on target. So we have to ask the questions, are we planning properly? Is it poor decision making, or are we doing things for the sake of doing it? So my team my team have done a number of evaluation studies. So one of the evaluation studies, unfortunately this hit from COVID to past COVID lockdown, but we managed to do our focus groups with the ward committees and also the incosis as well as various public. We went out and we interviewed the public as well. And this is what some of the participants are saying. They're saying, the ward committee is saying, we understand it, but the community doesn't understand what the IDP is. There's ineffective monitoring and evaluation, and this we took as a hit on our side as the monitoring and evaluation department. They said, can the M&E officials please visit our ward so that the people can also have development? Because what they're saying is, you have this lovely plan to develop, but when the plans are rolled out, we don't see any development. You say you're going to do this, this, and this, but it doesn't happen. So this is some of the comments we got when we did the evaluation. In the interest of time, I won't take this through, because I do believe you may have these presentations. So other findings from other evaluation studies is heavy reliance on outsourced services. What we found is there's a duplication. We may have a whole lot of engineers. In fact, eThekwini is probably the most amount of engineers in the country. But we also outsource our services. We work in silos, as I mentioned. There's less optimal public participation. That means we're not really engaging the public in terms of what it is that they want. So this year has been a real focus. In fact, I spent the last 2 days with the mayor and councillors looking at what the public wanted and whether we've actually addressed that through our IDP and the budget. Have we done it or not? If we haven't, the councillor is saying, go back to the planning. This is what the public wants. They want the roads to be dealt with so that when kids are, and the paving to be dealt with, so when kids are going to school, it's safe. They want housing. They want electricity in areas. But is our plan talking to that, or is it something the administration thinks that they know what the public wants and that's what they're delivering? So this is some of the challenges we have. So the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation in the President's Office in 2022 identified this through the various studies that they did, that there is definitely a disjunct between we plan beautifully, in fact you can call them extremely beautiful plans, but when it comes to implementation, we fall apart. So how do we look at this from an integrated perspective? So they developed the policy framework for integrated planning in 22. And I've given you some of the details around it. If you go and research it, you'll find this integrated planning document. It deals with short, medium, and long-term planning, but it also deals with 3 spheres of government, which is what I didn't want to talk about because I know it's critical. We have the DDM process in eThekwini. We also have the Presidential Working Group, which is also part of this integrated planning process. We have the CSP, which is the City Support Program by National Treasury, which is also part of an integrated planning process. And they're doing very good work in making sure that we deliver what we're supposed to be doing. But how is it possible that we, as municipal employees, can start integrating our planning processes within the municipal environment? So as part of that document, it says there is a need to improve the alignment of plans at different levels, which is what I spoke about, as well as to better coordinate implementation towards achievement of development plans, so development results. So there I've introduced the sound integrated planning. So I've also looked at it and said, and it's been a passion of ours at M&E to look at integrated implementation planning. And I think that's been a huge missing link. We plan, but we don't integrate the implementation, which is what I spoke about earlier. So this process of integrating your planning during your implementation makes sure that we have real-time data. And I know there's a technology focus at this Indaba, and I'll deal with that shortly, but it deals with local community insights, sectoral needs, and collaborative governance to create an actionable performance-driven process. So I just want to talk about those 4 bullet points on the top, because a lot of it is about making sure we get to an integrated implementation planning process. So the first one, integrated planning between departments within your own municipal environment. As officials within the finance, the audit, the risk and performance processes, we can start the conversation to get line management to start talking to each other. In fact, we as M&E within eThekwini are often seen as the facilitators of these conversations, and we've embarked on a number of those type of initiatives where we get departments together and we start facilitating the conversations around integrated planning and transversal management. So when water, so there's been an audit finding which we've had recently around the provision of water to communities and human settlements. So one of the biggest challenges we've had is that when the bulk infrastructure is rolled out, there's a reticulation that happens from the road to the home. I'm hoping you'll all understand. I'm not an engineer, I'm not a water expert, but because we deal with this so often, these words just come to you and you think everybody understands. So the bulk infrastructure is laid down by the Water and Sanitation Engineering Department. So to make sure that water gets to a new area, for example, if you're building houses in the new area. From the point of where the bulk water is to the home, we need to then make sure that the water, so it's reticulated to the home so that they can get water services either to provide water or for sanitation purposes. Now, we've had an audit finding in that we assume that water and sanitation are doing this. Meanwhile, the Human Settlements Department, who is building the infrastructure, the housing units themselves, are actually in charge of making sure that the water goes to the home itself. So we've been harassing the wrong department for information, and they haven't been giving us the information. And the two departments are just not talking to each other. So we now brought a process together. How do we get these two departments to talk to each other so we get information when the Auditor General comes to audit us? We have the correct information. The Auditor General can go out there and verify that this is the correct information. So again, am I running out of time?
5 minutes.
Okay. So this is a critical thing around integrated planning. There's focused budgeting. Now, I know in our municipalities, we allocate 3 million rand per ward over and above the normal budgeting process where the ward councils can determine projects. But sometimes this money is just left unused because they're not unsure as to what it needs to be. So focused budgeting, there needs to be a process where the finance team works with the strategy team, works with ward committees, work with the ward-based planning unit to determine what these projects are. And we've been facilitating and assisting in this process, but also the municipal manager has been making sure that we get to the ward-based planning in our municipality. Then we look at holistic services. Now, this is a pet peeve of mine. So, when we go out and we look for contractors, subcontractors to clean the verges, I'm sure many of you have this problem. When they start cutting the grass, what do? They leave the grass and they've moved on. So about a year back, I was driving into my home and there's contractors that cut the grass and they just left everything. And you know, in between the grass, you find all the actual solid waste. Everything was strewn everywhere. I had a huge fight with this contractor. I said, but it's simple decency. It may not be in your contract, but just move all that to one side so it can be. He just cut the grass and he drove off with no, it really makes you think to yourself, is it their fault or is it our fault as a municipality? So when we look at holistic services, a tender, if we're going out to tender, why is it not possible for department to say, okay, fine, if they're cutting the grass, increase the tender for them to pick up the grass itself, but also get Durban Solid Waste to be involved in that process so that they can take away the solid waste. Because I can tell you, the very next day, either it's windy or you have the street sweepers come and they're going to sweep all that dirt back into the storm drainage. What happens? Floods happen. Storm drains overflowing. Homes are flooded. So the consequence of not planning properly, not integrating the planning is so massive. And then you find people are then washed away in these floods because the infrastructure cannot handle this because of all the debris that's in the infrastructure. So it's absolutely critical that we deal with facilitating as practitioners in finance, in audit, in risk, in performance, assist the line department to start thinking beyond what is their own responsibilities and integrating those processes. And then data and technology. Without data, and I'm sure you've technology substantively over the last few days. There are so many different types of methodologies of technology that you can use to gather data, to look at what's happening in the environment around you. We do a lot of that within the M&E framework. So I'm just going to go to one case study in a minute. So the city manager has been very passionate about the inner city. For those of you who come to the city, I'm hoping you've seen that there's a huge difference from a couple of years ago. We've started the inner city regeneration program, which is now being chaired by the city manager on a Monday from 4 o'clock all the way down to 10 o'clock sometime at night, with key departments that need to attend. And the vision of this is to make sure that the inner city, and then we move out to the other parts of the city, is especially clean, is grime-free. So we've created the solution of having an integrated planning process, and you can see the various key aspects of the integration. But the outcomes was to have a coordinated, efficient urban renewal process. And through this process, we've seen huge changes within our inner city. So the framework that I'm suggesting, which you can use in your own way in the municipalities, is to first determine what the situation is. What is it that we want to change? What do we need to prioritize? Who do we collaborate with, whether it's internal to the environment or external? But we must be able to monitor and evaluate it. And we must make sure that there's integrated implementation. So the key takeaways, Chair, I'm hoping I'm within my 5 minutes as well, is that there should be sound integrated planning, but more so integrated implementation planning. Without that, we're all failing, and that's what the first picture I showed you. We need to integrate real-time data. So when I talk about real-time data, very quickly, what we're looking at is, through this process, we want GPS coordinates. Where are these projects? So anyone looking for these projects when they go out, especially from an audit perspective, they know exactly where these projects are. They know exactly what should be found in these projects. We have people verifying on the ground, looking at the quality of the work that's being done. There needs to be continuous stakeholder engagement, which is why our mayor has been very, very robust in making sure that we engage with the communities, because we then prevent all these various uprisings that you see in the community. Transversal management, you have to talk to each other. We have to plan together. We need to integrate all of those processes. And also we need to accelerate service delivery from inside. We've got the resources. If we don't have the resources, we outsource, but we need to accelerate service delivery. So I'm asking local government leaders to embrace sound integrated implementation planning to unlock the full potential of sustainable development, collaboration, innovation, and better service delivery. I'm hoping I made sense. The program director stood up, so that means my time is up, and I want to thank you again for this opportunity.